These are the notes for unifications of Germany and Italy, and we're going to be looking at how nationalism was used to help unify them. Remember that with the notes you can stop or pause the video at any point or rewind it if you missed something. You want to make sure that you have the notes from class in front of you, or that you have printed them off or downloaded them from Blackboard. So let's go. After the French Revolution, we had a number of revolutions throughout Europe. Most of them were not successful, if you remember. We had revolutions in 1830 and 1848 because of nationalism, groups of nations, of people that wanted to be separate from the empire that they were part of. People wanted more democracy as well. And so as the idea of nationalism spreads, we have these revolutions. Remember that nationalism is people's loyalty should belong not to a king, but to a nation with a common culture or history. Now, if your government is made up of one common culture or history, then you're going to be loyal to that as well. So we'll start off by looking at Italy and how Italy unifies. So prior to unification, Italy was made up of independent city-states, and so each little city would control the territory around it, which ends up being called a city-state. So like, for example, Venice was one, Florence was one, Rome was one, Naples, etc. Now, some of them had been taken over by foreign countries. Napoleon controlled a bunch of them, and so France is still going to control some. Austria is going to control some. The Ottomans are going to come in and try to control some. They won't be so successful. So not all of them are purely Italian at this point. Here's our map. Okay, you can see up in the north the Kingdom of Sardinia. This green is also the island of Sardinia. This northern part is called Piedmont. Austria controls this area over here next to the Republic of Venice, which is very large. We have the Republic of Trent, Parma, where Parmesan is from, Modena, Lucca, Republic of Genoa, Grand Duchy of Tuscany, the Papal States, which remember are controlled by the Pope and have a religious government, so they're called a theocracy, and then the Kingdom of Sicily, which at one point was Sicily and Naples. So what do you think is common between these independent states? Well, it's going to be the parts of nationalism, okay? So they're all going to speak the same language, they're all going to practice the same religion, they're going to have common culture, and that's going to make it much easier to unify because you're not having to deal with different languages or different cultures that you have to bring together into one nation. So in Italy, everyone on this peninsula speaks Italian. That's going to be very helpful to help them unify. Most everybody's Catholic. Rome is right in the center. That makes a lot of sense. And they're all going to have the same culture. They have very similar jobs. They have very similar lifestyles, things like that. So we have a couple people who are involved. The first one is a guy named Camillo di Cavour. He was the prime minister for the King of Sardinia, whose name was Victor Emmanuel. And Camillo di Cavour is going to use diplomacy to unify northern Italy, beginning in 1858. So he has a plan, and he's going to work really hard to unify it. It might take some more, but usually it's going to be through diplomacy. Now, at the same time, down in the southern part of the island, remember our Kingdom of Sicily, so Sardinia is where Count Cavour is working. Down in Sicily, at the tip of the boot, is going to be Giuseppe Garibaldi. He's going to unify southern Italy through what is called guerrilla warfare. And so he has a goal as well. He wants to unify the entire peninsula, but he's going to get to the southern part and then be defeated by Cavour and the northerners, and then that's going to unify the entire thing, and then Garibaldi is going to work for the northerners. So he's doing this around 1860. Same time as the U.S. is starting the Civil War. Okay, so that's kind of the time period we're in. Now, guerrilla warfare, if you're not sure what it is, download the PowerPoint and click on the link. I'll post the video on Blackboard for you to see it. But it goes through what the meaning of the word, guerrilla, which means little war. And so it's kind of one of those hit-and-run warfare styles where it's not army facing army. It's a small band attacking a larger army, kind of a hit-and-run style. So eventually, when Garibaldi is defeated by Cavour and his group, Garibaldi is going to agree to allow Victor Emmanuel, the King of Sardinia, to become the king of all Italy once they've unified it. Now, they unify it, but they don't have control of the entire peninsula yet. And so the Italian army under Victor Emmanuel is going to take control of the Papal States. So essentially, Victor Emmanuel is the king, Cavour is the prime minister, and Giuseppe Garibaldi is helping out with the army. Once they take over the Papal States, they're going to leave the Pope with the Vatican City, which today is the world's smallest country. It is located in the city of Rome, Okay, so it's a country within a city within a country, if that makes any sense. Google Map it, you can see it. We watched a video in class about the election of the Pope, or we will watch, maybe next year, not watching it. And this is the seat of the Catholic Church, where the Catholics are in control. So here's our map of Italy, and excuse me, and unification. So it starts with Piedmont and Sardinia, and then they add this northern part, Lombardy, Parma, Modena, Tuscany, and then the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies is added, and then the Papal States in the middle, and then they add Venice at last. And then finally this tiny little last part around Rome. So we're adding a whole bunch of it together. You can also see through our colored maps, so they take over the green part first, and part of the blue up north, and then they're taking over the yellow, and so everything becomes orange. And then finally they take over the Papal States, which is red, and Venice, which is blue. Now in class, we went into a little bit more detail, talking about the 4 stages of Italian unification, how Count Cavour helped and how Garibaldi helped, and then we talked about who was more important, Cavour or Garibaldi. So you should go download the article about Italian unification from Blackboard, or grab it from class, and read through it and answer the questions that are on the back, because that will help you have a better understanding of how Italy unified and how nationalism helped affect it. So stop the video, go do that, and then come back. Alright, now Germany is going to be somewhat similar, or at least they're similar to start. They're also made up of independent city-states. The 2 leading city-states, or the most powerful, are Austria and Prussia. Okay, Austria is also its own separate empire down here in the southern part of what today we would call Germany. Prussia is this big pink blob. Okay, they also control part of the western side of Germany. And what do you think is going to be common between these independent city-states up in Germany, or what today we call Germany? It's going to be similar things to what is common between the Italian city-states. Okay, they're all going to speak German for the most part. They all have common customs and culture and holidays and things like that. The northern parts are Protestant. The very southern bit down here where you can see my cursor is going to be more Catholic than Protestant. So they're going to have to do some tricky stuff to get them united. You'll read about that in the article. But for the most part, they have the same religion. So what ends up happening is everything starts with Prussia. They're kind of the ones starting it all off, just like Cavour was starting it in Italy. So Wilhelm I becomes king, or what they call Kaiser in Germany. And he wants to unite Germany. And so he's really lucky that he has a very good prime minister, a very powerful prime minister named Otto von Bismarck. And Bismarck believes in what is called Realpolitik, which is gaining power and control by any means necessary. So you do whatever you have to do in order to get to the end point. Okay, the means justify the end, essentially, or the end justifies the means, is the right way to say it. So some examples of Realpolitik include manipulating diplomacy to get what you want. Okay, think about how sometimes you might manipulate your parents to get what you want from them. Same idea. You adopt small changes in the government to prevent a revolution, so you don't have any of those 1848 revolutions. You do just enough to keep people happy, but not enough to give them real, true, natural rights. You might invade another country and rule them and take them over and add them to your country, annex them. You might break false treaties or make false treaties with the intention of breaking them. Sure, we'll sign a treaty, don't worry, it won't be a problem. And then you break the treaty a month or 2 later. You might violate your constitution when necessary, so sure, though, it's nice to have First Amendment rights like freedom of religion and speech and assembly and petition and all of those of the press, but maybe during this time you don't need to have that freedom of speech thing. We're just going to take that away. That's violating the Constitution. And then you can create political incidents to force politics your way. The best example of this is when there's no actual proof of this, but people are pretty sure that Hitler had the legislative building called the Reichstag burnt down in Germany and blamed it on the Socialist Party because the Socialists were gaining a lot of political power, and everybody believed Hitler blaming it on them, and so then they lose all their power and Hitler becomes more powerful. Okay, so that's an example of what would happen for Realpolitik, and Bismarck's going to use a couple of these. So you'll read about more of these in the article. But he's going to defeat Austria, the other powerful German state, by winning 3 wars, some of which he started on purpose. He starts out with the Dutch, then goes to the Austrians, then goes to the Franco-Prussians. And then eventually, in 1871, after the three wars, Bismarck has united Germany. And Kaiser Wilhelm I becomes the king of all the Germanies. And the German Empire calls itself the Second Reich. Reich in German means empire, so they're becoming the Second German Empire. The first was the Holy Roman Empire, if you remember Charlemagne and Charles V and Charles X and all those people that we talked about earlier this year. The Third Reich is going to be the Nazi Empire, trying to recreate it. So if you look at the map, you can see how we started with Prussia, all of that gold color, and then we're adding the purple, the Hanover, then the Schleswig and Holstein and Hesse, and then we add the pinkish Mecklenburg and Saxony, and then we add the bottom South German states, which included part of Austria, and then we're going to add Alsace and Lorraine. Now the funny thing is that Alsace and Lorraine, if you had children, and you could have children with two different birth certificates, one from Germany, one from France, depending on when the last war was fought and who won, because this border between France and Germany is going to change hands pretty much every 50 years. It'll change hands again at the end of World War I and again at the end of World War II. So, now on your map, if you would take a second to label the empires, you should be able to label most of them. This one may be a big question, but think about the fact that Vienna is in it. Think about where Vienna today is a part of. Okay. Down here might be a little trouble. Starts with an S. That's the only hint I'll give you. This you might want to call Turkey, but it's not Turkey yet. What do we still call it? Think about that. Pause the video, label it. There'll be a slide in a minute to show you where everything is. And then we actually went and read in class the Unification of Germany. We talked about why Prussia was important and what was the purpose of the Germans' customs union, why it's better to become together economically before you do any political stuff, how Bismarck helped, and then we filled out the timeline at the bottom. All of that is posted on Blackboard, and also you can pick it up from class. So here is the map. Okay, we had Great Britain, we had France, Spain down at the bottom, you had to label Sweden, you had to label Germany, Italy, Austria, or what we call the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Serbia was the one that I was trying to give you clues for, Turkey, which should say the Ottoman Empire, this map is wrong, and the Russian Empire big up into the north. And then the last thing we did in class was we compared and contrast German unification, looking at Germany on one side, Italy on the other side, what they have in common and what is different. So if you missed that, please make sure to get that from a friend, or come in and see me and we'll go over it, and then use Quizlet to study for the quiz.